But the meeting will be recorded, and so we can share with them. And if we have a short meeting, we have a short meeting. So
I'll
where's
take
my
minutes.
agenda? Oh, good.
Easy.
Thank you, Marie. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, yeah, the first thing on the agenda was to discuss our meeting schedule between now and annual. So it is February already, which is surprising. Um, so March, April, May. So really, we have like 3.5 months between now and annual, and I think we've got a number of things that we would want to do, particularly with our 5-year plan, to be ready for that. So what I am proposing is that we try to meet once a month between um, now and annual, including having a meeting in June. I think that should give us time to um, talk through some things and put some stuff together. Does that sound good to the couple of you who are here right now? There's Ambergino. Hi.
Yes, that sounds fine to me.
Okay.
It's
Um,
okay with me.
okay. So
I'm
what?
probably gonna
Go
miss.
ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm probably gonna miss one of the meetings because I'm trying to get a trip to England together.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, actually. So, um, what I will probably do is I will then try to get doodle polls set up by the end of the week, which actually is by tomorrow, so we can get those on people's calendars early. Um, and as I say, we talked at Midwinter, and we'll talk about this in a minute, about the idea that we wanted, and actually we talked about this too with other conference calls we had, about the idea that we wanted to get our 5-year plan set by annual so that it's done and we can move forward with other things, which again I think we can do based on some of the discussions we had, and continuing to work online and with conference calls. I think we can do that. So does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yes.
Yes. And by the way, this is Marie. I
Mm-hmm.
hope the sound of my typing doesn't distract people.
Mm-hmm.
If it does, I'll put my microphone on mute. But if I put it on mute, it's hard for me to answer Hallie when she asks.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's
I am paying attention. I'm not like doing emails or something.
oh no, that's okay. That's okay. Um, and so they've already asked for our schedule for annual, and again, we will have the Ledge 1 will be joint with COL, and then Ledge 2 will be on Sunday. Um, I know that they are talking about doing some major changes to the scheduling, which would come in 2018, I believe, as far as how meetings are conducted, et cetera, et cetera. And so we should be hearing more about that. It may push meetings. Well, I think what they're trying to do is push people to do more virtual meetings, but um, you know, we can adapt as um, as necessary. So there'll be more coming through on that as well. But for now, we're still having our regular um, one meeting on Saturday with COL and one on Sunday. So, and I will ask also, maybe a little closer to the time, how many people are going to annual. Um, well, I can ask this group how many people are going to annual.
I'm going.
Okay, I'm going.
Hopefully gone.
Okay,
I don't know yet.
okay. It's in Chicago, so. And Bernadine is saying make sure second GODORT Ledge does not conflict with the second GIS meeting. Um, yeah, I asked Selena about that because our second one actually did, although she said that they scheduled that second one, um, that they scheduled that one in case there's stuff that comes out of the first meeting. And this time, of course, they didn't even have half their committee members there. But I will check with her that that's the case, to make sure that's the case, or if she thinks that's important. But thank you for reminding me of that. So,
I had a conflict with another committee, with
oh,
another GODOT committee, so that
okay.
might be also something to check as well.
Yeah, I know they're trying to avoid that, but I think in some cases it's unavoidable. What meeting was the conflict?
Cataloging.
Ah, okay, okay.
It's the
Let me
first time
look.
ever that I've had two GODOT meetings at the same time.
Huh, okay, well,
Yeah.
Let me look at one quick second and see what his proposal was. Because they're waffling between a 3-day and a 4-day meeting. So if I'm looking at what has currently been proposed, COL, GIS, Ledge 1 conflicts with the state and local governments, state and local task force, and that's it. Sunday, we would conflict with the education committee. So, as things currently stand now.
Okay.
So again, just because of the scheduling limitations, there may be no way around that. But yeah. But that's a preliminary schedule, so we'll see what happens when we actually do get the final version. So, okay. Anything else on scheduling? As I say, I'll get some doodle polls out by the end of the week, and we'll go from there. Okay. Next thing on the agenda was this 5-year plan, I think. Yeah. Okay. So did everyone those of you who weren't there, did you have a chance to listen to the recording of our Ledge 2?
I'm afraid I did not listen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I realized 5 minutes before the meeting that I had not sent out minutes from that, and Kate took some and I took some, and so my apologies, but I will put those together and get them out by the end of the week, but I can give you some highlights of those and we can discuss a bit more here. So sorry, my phone is going crazy here, but we can ignore that. That's what voicemail's for. So we talked, about this Genie document, and that it was really an aspirational document at this point. And again, because John, of course, is not here to, expand on his thoughts behind this. We can use this as a jumping off point. We discussed really that the goals are really more outward facing, and that we've have already discussed the idea that we need to do some focusing inward. And our charge states that we need to have a balance between what GODORT needs versus ALA community versus the entire library community. And also that we keep in mind the uncertain state of politics this year, which, yeah, that pretty much says it all. And one of the things that was emphasized too, both at the Legislative Assembly that I attended on Friday, as well as at this meeting, is that we need to make sure that whatever we do is going through the proper channels, whether it be going through GODORT steering or whether it be going through ALA's Legislative Assembly, COLGIS, what have you, because otherwise that really alienates us within GODORT and within ALA. That said, we still have plenty of opportunities, to work with these various groups to move forward any agenda items, resolutions, what have you. We did agree that we need to have a more robust committee with more members, and I know with the reorganization, we no longer have liaisons from other groups, save our counselor. So with that in mind, I think one of the things we're going to need to talk about is how many members do we need. I think we're, what do we have now? 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, 6 plus Bill, and he's ex officio. So we will need to talk about how many members that we have. We also thought that the idea would be that this is a 2-year commitment because, it does seem to take, well, I think it's already set up as a 2-year thing, but it's a 2-year commitment. The ideal would be that we have some sort of onboarding process, explain what the committee does, what it does, what we need them to do for new members, but also that the chair of the committee should really be someone who is coming in, from their 2nd year. Now, I'm an anomaly, of course, because of the circumstances, but the idea would be that we would have, the incoming group, and then out of that group would be the next year's chair. And so then it would be important, of course, the way we set up the staggered terms, and so we have about half rotating on and half rotating off at any time. And it would be good for GODORT steering and legislation committee to attend each other's meetings as much as possible, and of course with the schedule, of course, that sometimes isn't always possible, as much as possible, so everyone is aware of what's going on. Because there was a pretty good contingent of the GPO folks who were there, and I asked them, what are some examples of advocacy work that we can help with? And their thing, this was Lori Hall and David Walls, was to help get the word out, be a conduit for the work that they're doing well. Also want to know what's going on in legislation, or that they want to know what's going on in our committee as well, so there's no confusion between, what we're doing versus what they're doing. And they have views their past few years as very transformational and would like to get the word out, which I think is something we can help them do. In general, though, we also need to define advocacy. Some see it as just a bunch of noise, and we want our advocacy to actually lead to outcomes. And so is it really just a matter of getting the word out versus more measurable outcome, that resolutions to be the end result, not the beginning of a discussion? And a lot of assumption from Congress about the online digital nature of government information, and it needs to be known that this is not always the case, which I think actually applies to not just people in Congress, but even some of our library colleagues. And I guess from my notes too, we also need to explore that there's a connection between awareness and advocacy. Again, being aware of something doesn't necessarily mean that you're advocating for it. And we also, let's see here. GODORT members in general sometimes may be too close to a particular problem that we're looking to really offer a solution, so we can't work on assumptions, but really do need to go outside our own box of people, and that collaboration with other groups is going to be a key. And our role is to identify concerns and investigate or raise awareness, and how it is delivered is really important. The idea that we can encourage more awareness of resolutions through thoughtful programming. And it was suggested that if a group wants to propose a resolution to ALA, they need to host a program first, and then everyone will have a say, and then advocacy will take more of a complete form. And then so going forward, what we were going to consider is expanding membership, focusing on more process for drafting and working on resolutions, educate and discuss what advocacy really is, ensuring that resolutions are an outcome and not the first step of the discussion, require all major resolutions to host a program, maintain better communication within GODORT in general, and I think that's something all of GODORT wants to work on. Maintain two-way communication with GPO and look for opportunities to advocate for them. And our ideal outcome is to be able to clearly define how the legislation committee and resolution drafting works biannual. It also occurred to me in talking with in going to the Legislative Assembly, was that they said that they would be happy to have people come and talk to various groups about advocacy, what they do, what they don't do, what they want us to do or not want us to do, and I thought that would be very excellent for them to do for annual. And so I will see if we can get them to come at least spend part of that meeting talking to us, or Ledge 2. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds
So yeah,
good
that was
to me.
good. Well, that was kind of a quick overview of the things that we discussed. I thought it was a very good discussion on, just kind of what our, expectations are, the direction that we may want to be moving forward with. I do think it's key that we do get more members involved in this group. I mean, again, I know one of the issues with reorganization is that there were too many slots to fill, but I think in this case, if we can aim for not just more members, but kind of a more of a broad representation, So not getting like just all academics or all publics or what have you, because there's many, advocacy, you know, on some things certainly is sometimes a little more library type specific. I know the public libraries have different needs and issues than say the academics do, even within the FDLP. So, um, so, so that's kind of where we're at. I mean, those of you who weren't, well, I guess anyone who either was or wasn't there, any thoughts to add on that or reactions to our my overview here? And again, I will make sure to get out more complete minutes and put them up on the wiki.
It all sounds really reasonable.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, just to clarify, did you want to expand membership of this group in particular?
Yeah, I think we need to. Again, we actually had one additional member, and she is no longer a member of GODORT, actually, or a member of ALA even. And so I can see certainly that this could be a group of, at least 8, if not 10 people, as long as these are, as long as everyone is able to commit to the committee. And again, if we want to go with a more, say, cross-representation of what GODORT is, I think it wouldn't hurt to aim for that many people. But again, that's kind of go ahead.
Well, what is the process for admitting new members?
Well, basically, from my understanding, because these are not elected positions, it would be a matter of just the chair is, or well, and even I take it back, the chair is appointed, but it really is a matter of they put out, I think, a call for people who are want to participate in committees and what have you. It's a matter of recruiting, identifying people who might want to participate, people who we feel would add to the add to the group. And yeah, Bernadette saying the reason for liaisons was to get members from all types of libraries, including international, state, and local. Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was also so that these people could bring issues from their various task forces and what have you, and committees to legislation for follow through, if I'm not mistaken. So really, it's a matter of recruiting and identifying people who are willing to serve, and again, so we can get some what of a cross representation, and also be willing to serve for 2 years. That's the other part of it, because I think other committees are not a 2-year commitment. So, but again, I think when we get to annual, that's something we're going to need to emphasize too, is that this is what we see for this committee, is having more members, among other things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, again, because we're missing a few people, we will continue to work on this and continue to refine this, and so we can have a good 5-year plan. And also, we really will need to look at the policy and procedures manual for, make sure that we're doing what it says and vice versa. But again, I think we've got time to get that put together. So, and I also should mention Jessica McGilvray, who has been GODORT's contact with the Washington office, is actually leaving there on Friday. It's her last day. Our temporary person is, I forget who it is. They've assigned us someone temporary until they fill her position, so we do have a contact there. So, and again, I do want to pursue getting someone from their office to come in and talk to us, and so we can ask questions of them for annual. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else on this, I did want to talk about this Local Zoning Decisions Protection Act, and the link to that should be on the desktop there if people can go to that. Bernadine, will anyone from this committee go to Legislation Day in May? I don't know that anyone's planning to, but I will take a look and see what and where, and if it's logistics will permit. Okay. Okay. So has everyone gotten to the link to the bill itself?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Well, basically, this came through actually on, originally was put forward on gov.l, although MapsL has seen it, has created quite a stir amongst the geospatial community as well as the documents community, because if you scroll down to go to the text at the top and scroll down to section 3, where it says prohibition of use of federal funds. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, no federal funds may be used to design, build, maintain, utilize, or provide access to a federal database of geospatial information on community racial disparities or disparities in access to affordable housing. Now, in doing a little more research on this, basically this was put in place in the Obama administration with the idea that when they are making decisions about affordable housing, they needed more data to make better decisions. And so part of that was to gather this information if they didn't already have it from census or somewhere else, and use that in an online interactive mapping tool to do better decision making. Now, which seems like a logical thing to do, but and it's a bunch of Republicans who are pushing this to be overturned. And ironically enough, this is supposed to go into place in January too, or the bill or the new procedures. The problem with this section, aside from the obvious, is that it is way too broad, and it could be interpreted that census wouldn't be able to gather this information, or CDC wouldn't be able to gather this information. So in other words, what it sounds like that no federal agency would ever be able to gather this type of information. And of course, since for HUD, housing is obviously based on location, so that's a problem. Not to mention the fact that many other agencies besides HUD and the ones I mentioned use this type of data to do any sort of analysis. Bill Sudduth had mentioned that FEMA uses it for disaster relief. I know different agencies do things. I think agriculture looks at, say, food deserts and that type of thing, where a food desert is a place where people in that area don't have reasonable access to a decent grocery store, for example. So this potentially could have widespread issues beyond just this. So I talked or emailed with Jessica at the Washington office and said, this is something that we feel needs to be taken out of that bill. Well, the whole bill is kind of problematic anyway, but taken out of that. And what do we do? And she said that GODORT can't issue a letter. Well, and also McGirt is interested in working with us as well, the Map and Geospatial Information Roundtable. So Jessica said that while GODORT and McGirt can't issue a letter on ALA's behalf, what we can do for them is to provide examples and explanations as to the impact of what that particular section would have. The American Association of Geographers has already sent a letter to one of the senators who's a co-sponsor, explaining why this is a problem. So this is certainly attracting more and more attention, not just amongst the depository community. So what we would need to do is to come up with examples and come up with explanations in conjunction with McGirt, and then combine what we've got into a document so we can provide it to the Washington office, because they are watching the bills. They did also say that these have been assigned to a committee, but they're not being, or what's the action here? Introduced to Senate. I think they've been referred to a committee, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, one's referred to the House Committee on Financial Services, and one was referred to another committee, but they're not really doing anything with it yet, so they've got a little bit of time. So McGirt had already sent out a call for information from their members, and I would like to do the same on gov.l and probably use much of their text. I think with a deadline probably of March 1st at this point. What is the date today? Yeah, March 1st or March 3rd, so we can get stuff, so that's a couple weeks. So does that sound reasonable?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I can put that out and I'll have them send stuff to me, and I will work with Louise Ratliff, who is the McGirt chair, about putting stuff together. We'll probably want to run it by steering before we send it on, but I think, that certainly is something that we can do. And then Jessica had said they already have their eye on that particular bill, so I'm pretty sure other people have raised that as well. But then, because this seems to be what this is not a unique situation, as we know. Anyone who's been following the actions of Congress since January is aware that they are pushing many things to repeal acts and regulations and whatnot that were put in place in the Obama administration. So it certainly would behoove us to be aware of what's going on and to see if there's anything else like that comes up. Really, if it's something that we think the Washington office should be aware of, it's letting them know and then asking them what they want from us. Seems like the way that they would like us to proceed on this. So if there's something out there or you hear of something, now Daniel Cornwall had sent me an article, and I hadn't had a chance to pursue this yet, that there apparently is some push to have the census start asking questions about people's immigration status, which of course, the Census Department Bureau is kind of beside themselves, because one of the things they have been pushing is that they don't ask that to get people to respond. So that's something we probably want to keep an eye on as well.
Hallie, is
Yep.
that they're going to ask about their citizenship status?
Yeah, I didn't read this too closely, but it did sound, I got it and didn't have a chance to really delve into it, but it sounded like, yes, they were going to ask about their immigration status, or, are you a citizen? Are you a, whatever. And although, yes, this information is supposed to be private, of course, if you're not here legally, certainly, and they're asking that question, and, the Census Bureau is concerned that people will just stop answering, and of course, if you don't get an accurate count, that affects a whole number of things like funding for schools and the way, and the way districts are set up and what have you. So I mean, there's a lot of problems by doing that, and
I
there's
know
also, go ahead. Yeah.
Local governments use that in order to detect how much
Oh, couldn't quite hear you.
water pipes and things like that.
What was that?
If local governments also use that, they want to know how many people are living in certain areas, so they can do infrastructure like water pipes.
Exactly. Exactly. And, of course, the concern, too, is that they're gathering information about, immigration status, and that, that might be, justification for real or imagined that this is going to point to where, these people live. So, yeah, so that is something that we want to keep an eye on. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're going with that. But again, if there's something that you come upon that looks suspicious, or think something that, we might want to encourage the Washington office to look at, I think that's, something we can certainly do.
Okay.
Okay, and I will report back on what happens with our information gathering here. Okay, so our last thing is that we want to discuss the Preservation Working Group's preservation resolution. That's a mouthful. And I see Bernadine is here, and everyone did have a chance to look at the resolution as well as the email chain that went out today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bernadine, since you're here, is there anything? We'll let you start the ball rolling on the discussion. Okay. Okay. The working group report did not give options, did give options, including asking Congress for money as well as other groups, and we are simply following through. Okay. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, working on other funding suggestions at your next meeting. Okay. Well, again, okay, we'll wait for you to finish typing. Okay, several groups and states are writing letters to their senators asking for funding as well as Montana. Well, it'd be nice to hear who those states are and I guess what the ultimate plan is, because again, you know, and you were at the COLGIS meeting. GPO's big concern was that this ultimately is asking them to do grant funding, which they're really not set up to do. So I guess I'm curious with these other states, um, what what is the reason behind it beyond the fact that they think that more money needs to be allocated? Do they have specific projects in place? Are they or that they would like to pursue? What are I guess that's what I'm curious to know is as they're talking to them, what exactly do they want to use the money for, and not just plain preservation? I mean, do they have something specific in mind? What have you? Okay. Well, it's a statewide cooperative preservation project since we're such a small state with few libraries. Um, I'm curious, has Montana as a group talked to GPO about the possibility of doing this and what GPO can do to help? Um, which which Suzanne is this? Is this Suzanne, 'Caro? Because I don't know that she was on DLC, or was this Suzanne Sears? Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware Suzanne was on
I
DLC.
don't think she is.
Suzanne Carroll?
Susan Hero, I don't think she has been. Of course, Suzanne Sears was the chair around
Okay.
2011 or so.
Yeah, right. No, I know Suzanne's your regional. I just don't wasn't sure that she was on council. Or maybe this she talked about it at council. Well, I guess this is oh, yeah. Right. Okay, talked about at a meeting of regionals at council before everyone about Montana's concerns. Okay, well, I know she's not the only person who has concerns about um, preservation, about space and what have you. Um, I mean, that is an unfortunate reality with our libraries today. And I think that was one of the things that the regional discard policy was supposed to address, of course. Now, at this point, they don't have enough preservation stewards to actually do discarding, but the whole idea was that for those libraries who are dealing with major space concerns, assuming we have enough preservation stewards, which are people who were libraries who intend to retain things permanently, those libraries would be able to do some weeding of some big sets. Now, I realize at this point it's a very small number of things, but the idea is if the program can grow, um, this ultimately should help people in the long run. Okay. They don't want to discard their regional collection, they want to preserve it. That's great. Um, but again, I guess I'm curious, have they approached GPO about this? Because I know other libraries, like some of the ones who are preservation stewards, for example, um, they're being a preservation steward means that you can permanently retain that particular part of the collection. Yeah, GPO can't give them money, and money is what they need. Well, and again, that really does become kind of a vicious circle, doesn't it? Is that GPO isn't in a position to give them money. Um, but I guess, again, I think there's a couple things here, and of course this opens a whole can of worms is who is responsible for what in terms of money. I mean, the whole idea behind the program is that GPO gives you free materials in return for you providing housing and access to them. Now, I realize that, when the program was conceived, of course, no one thought it would become this huge, and, when you're talking enormous amounts of materials, which, and believe me, I I am well aware, as is Marie, of the amount of space it costs to, you know, it costs to store and house these things, and libraries aren't made of elastic; they don't expand when your collection does. Um, but I guess and that does bring up a good point. And maybe the better way to go about this is to take this to council for the spring meeting, and I don't know if their schedule is set completely, but there also should be a regionals meeting in conjunction with this. So if you've got a library like Montana who wants to preserve their collection but is facing financial issues when it comes to storage, what are their options? Is going to Congress really the way to do it? I mean, I know in our institution, if we need space for buildings or what have you, we have to go to our state legislature, General Assembly, I should say, excuse me. If it's a matter of housing or building related issues, you know.
A point of clarification for myself.
Mm-hmm.
This is not my area of expertise, but if you have a depository collection, are you obligated that you have to go to GPO for these sorts of issues, or can a depository library with, a preservation need without the money to start the program, can they go to other librarian-themed federal entities, or does it have to be, because it's a federal depository library program, it has to be GPO?
Well, my impression is that there's a couple different things. Now, again, the housing part of that, that seems to me that isn't a federal issue. That is more of a state or local issue. But as far as the collections themselves, that material belongs to the federal government, and one of the tenets of government information is that they will preserve, and spend the money on the materials that they have. Now, that said, I know there are different places who have pursued grants elsewhere for doing some things, preservation work, digitization work, that type of thing. I think, like I say, this ACERL Centers of Excellence have pursued that. The other issue too, and this really kind of goes back to the idea of yeah, Bernadine, that is sad but true that they will probably pay for funding, cut funding to pay for the wall in the military. Well, fingers crossed we don't get that far, but yeah, I mean, that is a very real issue too. I mean, they're already talking cutting the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts. I mean, this, yeah, it's an ugly situation all around. But again, certainly Montana's not the only ones facing that issue. The other point I was going to make is most regionals are not even if you want to be a preservation steward, most regionals either don't have a complete collection. In fact, no regional really does, so we don't know what a complete collection is, or they're only interested in preserving, certain parts of the collection. Like in our case, a good portion of our collection went through a fire, so it really isn't fit to, preserve long term, because we don't know the long term implications of the parts of the collection that were here and went through all that smoke and fire damage. And in fact, the collection in closed stacks still smells like smoke, and this is almost 14 years later. So, I think those are certainly good questions to ask, and obviously very legitimate issues in terms of where we go from here and how we do get funding for this. And, what do we do for those libraries who are interested in doing it and don't have the money to pursue it? Now, I will say this too with funding, and with doing preservation, a first step is really inventory and that type of thing. And so some of it is a balance of what you can do locally versus what you need money for. What we find here is the stuff you need money for, the, things like digitization, and not even digitization, storing the digital files as well as getting them cataloged, and maybe that's something that GPO can help with. I mean, I know we're seeing, and Marie, you're probably seeing the same thing. They're doing thousands upon thousands of records for hearings.
Well, I'm not too connected with the cataloging side of my operation.
Mm-hmm.
I am looking at this wording of this resolution. I think the reason why it is not.
We're losing you.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
The thing is, it's just so vague. It just says Congress should authorize the U.S. GPO to provide funds directly to libraries for preservation, paper, microfilm, and digital housed in their libraries. And so that it's so vague. It could include so much, including some things that we wouldn't necessarily want,
Mm-hmm.
to prioritize. And it
Yeah.
seems like it would be more convincing if it addressed something very specific that would have a very clear cost-saving effect for
Mm-hmm.
the whole country. I mean, I don't think we're going to convince Congress to just give money to something if it's not connected with something that's going to ultimately save money. See what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this just isn't. I appreciate the work that was put into it, so I'm just giving my honest responses. I find it not very persuasive.
Yeah. And Bernadine here is saying one charge could be to ask for pilot projects rather than a complete program that we did with the electronic project led to GPO Access Act. Well, and again, my impression is that GPO is already doing that, as they are, as I mentioned in my email chain, is that, their priorities are being set by input they're getting from not just the depository community, but from other agencies, from council, from Congress. So some of that is already happening. And I guess, again, I would think, as I say, in Suzanne's case, as the example here, it seems there's a kind of a two-part component is what is her library responsible for in terms of facilities, because, I can safely say that the federal government is not going to pay for libraries to build, remote storage units, versus what they're responsible for in terms of the collection itself. And that maybe is something that really could be discussed at a regionals meeting so we can get a little more clarity on that. And I forget who is on Regal at this point or who's doing what, but I can certainly track that down and ask if they're going to have a meeting, if that could be on the agenda. I'm making a note to myself.
But if GPO doesn't want to be the organization that provides grants, why are we saying that we want to talk about that? If they've already told us this is not something.
Nope, lost you again.
I'm sorry. Could you hear me? Sorry about my microphone. Is this any better?
Yes, now you're good.
Okay. If GPO already said that they don't want to get into this grant thing, why are we continuing writing them into this? I mean, it just seems as though the successful project is going to be one that everybody wants, right?
Right. Right.
And so if it wasn't so big and broad and vague, like GPO should be able to provide money for anything, make it very specific, something that's small and specific and that people understand what effect it would have. Personally, from my own experience here in Missouri, I'm going to turn on my white noise machine because I have students studying nearby. I hope the white noise doesn't bother. So let me know if the white noise is problematic. But anyway, I got to tell you, as far as the people of the state of Missouri getting access to federal information, they like it when it's online.
Mm-hmm.
They want for me to provide them a link. They may not be in an area that they're not going to go to a library. That's going to be like their last choice if they don't live near one. They want to get it on their phone. They want to get it on their computer. And so what would seem to make the most sense for the practical access to government information, at least for the people all across my state, is it's got to be digital. And so for the federal government for this grant thing so that a regional can get compact shelving, that's just not going to be very convincing.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government does have an interest. I think they do have an interest in their materials being saved, but I see them more as providing appropriations to the Library of Congress, to the National Archives, to their own federal libraries, the National Transportation Library, all those kinds of things, rather than to give it to a like a public university library, a state university or a state library that happens to have a regional collection. It just, there's a limited amount of money to go around. The people want digital, and so I don't want to keep repeating myself here, but I have to say I agree with those who have said this plan is not ready to go. Stephen, Woods, Sherry, Hallie, and I have to say I just don't think it's going to fly the way it is.
Well, I guess a couple points. You mentioned the idea that people want digital, and one thing that I am hoping is going to happen, as far as GPO and Library of Congress is concerned, because every interview I've heard from Carla Hayden is that she wants to digitize materials. And it seems to me, again, for the very same reasons that Marie states, is that they want to make more materials accessible. And so the idea, would be that, seems like a prime opportunity for them to have a partnership in terms of digitizing materials from the Library of Congress's collection. They're not a regional, but they are pretty darn close in terms of what they get and what they have. And to me, that seems much, much more logical than going out to these different libraries and try to digitize their collections. So that's something I would like to see. Now, Bernadine here is saying we have the programs at Annual to educate librarians about the issue and how to do it, which is great. GPO says they do not run to receive gifts. The deputy director says they're capable of providing grants. They handle millions of dollars for contracts of all kinds of services, printing, editing, graphics, etc. There's a history of giving libraries money for cataloging to all kinds of libraries. That's what LSTA does. Yes, and I know there's other places that do kind of grants and that type of thing too. But I guess to go back to your first point, where it seems like we're hearing different things from different people at GPO. I mean, Lori Hall was adamant that this is not what they want to get into, but you're saying that the deputy director is. So, I guess to me, if this is something that they want us to work on, as I said in one of my messages, that they really need to come and talk to us about that. I think we need to hear that directly from them. And yes, as you can see by the disappearance of data from websites already, digital is not permanent. Therefore, we need to protect the backup in paper in order to redigitize if the digital is destroyed. Yes, absolutely. But the other component of that is protecting the born digital materials, which are, most people agree are more fragile even than the tangible, because there is no backup for that, and because with changing technologies, I mean, we were just discussing today some of these old CDs from the census we can't play on our new computers because they spin too fast. The CD drives are different, so we're looking for an emulator of some sort. Chief of Staff and the deputy, and they want to help provide permanent public access purpose of the Pope. Yeah, I mean, certainly from everything I've heard, the last when I was in council, and since I've been pretty much since I've been a regional coordinator, is they do want to help libraries provide permanent public access. But again, I think if they want GODORT to help lobby on their behalf for more money, I think they need to come and talk to us themselves and see what they want to do.
Hallie, are they even allowed to even talk about that kind of thing? I mean, I thought that they weren't allowed to promote, to ask, the public to advocate for them to get money for appropriations.
Yeah. I am not entirely sure, but it certainly is worth pursuing.
And also, we only have the acting superintendent of documents for something this big.
Yeah.
Should there be a full-fledged superintendent of documents in place, or something of this proportions?
Well, right now, I mean, it looks like DeVita was asked to continue on. I mean, that, there wasn't an announcement to that effect, but as you know, agency heads generally submit their resignation, are expected to when a new president comes in, and sometimes they ask them to stay. Now, of course, there were some very high-profile agency heads who were given the boot, but it looks like DeVita is going to be around for a while. Not sure what Lori's plans are, but when Mary Alice stepped down or retired, the assumption was it would be well into 2017 before anything was decided on that. So this is going to be a while. Bernadine, GPO expects the library community to ask for what librarians want. We asked for microforms and digitals, got both. GPO did not advocate for it. Well, yeah, and I don't disagree. I think, again, as I said, that, the projects they're working on now came from recommendations from lots of different groups, including our community. So I think we're doing that. I think we can certainly do more of that. I guess because we're at the end of our hour here, but I would like to suggest again that that a good topic of discussion for the regional meeting would be this idea of responsibilities for local financial needs versus, the preservation needs, if we're looking, for regionals as particular, but libraries in general who want to preserve, do preservation work. The other thing, too, that we need to consider is that preservation, at least my impression of it, is preservation is going to really implies permanent retention. And I think some of the issues, not that people don't want to preserve materials, but I think something has to be addressed of, what are the expectations if GPO provides assistance of some way, you know, regardless of how they do it, is what is the expectation of, you know, if if you're going to preserve it, are you expected to permanently retain it? So I think that's something that needs to be addressed as well. Okay. Um, well, again, as I say, GPO has stated that they're really not, at least Lori said that they're really not set up to be a grant funding agency. But, if this is something that they think they can do, I do think that we have to hear it directly from them. Now, whether that's they come to a meeting and say, yes, this is something that we think we can do or what have you, but I think we do, you know, need to talk to them directly to see what they have in mind and what they might want to do or might not want to do. Okay. By end, we should know who is in charge of GPO. They could all be gone, but the libraries will still be there. Well, maybe biennial we'll know. I that may be overly optimistic, but who knows? I hope biennial will know, but we'll see. I guess because again, I want to wrap up our meeting here, but I guess, Bernadine, with your group, I'd like to ask if you could put your resolution on hold for a bit while we discuss this further amongst ourselves, amongst the committee and get other input on this. And again, if GPO does want us to pursue this, it'd be great if they could talk to us directly. Um, yeah, okay, well, I think certainly, I think we've got people talking at least amongst GODORT. I think your preservation program probably will give, a little more context to all of this. And again, um, as we said earlier, it seems that resolutions really should come out of, we're kind of talking about the idea of should resolutions come out of programs or not.
So Bernadine is saying that she has information from people within GPO that they want us to do this,
Mm-hmm.
the deputy director and other people. Did they ever write it down, or was it just a phone call, or what? I mean, it's a lot easier for our committee to work on something if we see something, an email from the person,
Mm-hmm.
at GPO who wants us to do it. It's just
Yeah.
it's hard to move forward when it's based on a talk about what might have been happening on the telephone. See
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, and I don't disagree that certainly everyone's in favor of libraries getting more money. I don't know that any librarian who isn't, but I say libraries should ask whether one if Congress is authorized. Who is that? That's GPO. Okay. Um, well, again, I agree with Marie. If they've got something or want to email us or something written down, it'd be helpful to get that from them before we proceed. And we really do need to wrap up today's meeting here. But so let's do this. As I say, I will get our meeting schedule set up through June. And certainly we can continue to continue the discussion through email. And if we want this, Bernadine, if we still want this on the agenda for our next meeting, which will happen sometime in March, yeah, we can certainly do that. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Well, thank you all. And Maria done the minutes, and so and we've got the recording here for the people who weren't there. I will check up on hope Frank's okay. And keep an eye out for some emails from me about scheduling our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Hallie.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.